This collection of David's writings follows his unique journey and offers incredible insights into how the left operates, rewriting history, championing totalitarian regimes, cheering for America's enemies, and doing everything they can to disrupt and undermine the American system. This is a story that only can be told by someone who has walked on both sides of the political aisle. Thankfully for us, that person has had the courage to take the arrows that have been raining down upon him for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Horowitz.
My parents were members of the Communist Party, card-carrying, which means they were part of a vast international conspiracy that was indeed orchestrated from Moscow, and they were attempting to, or their goal was to create a Soviet America. Of course, they didn't call themselves communists. I never heard them use that word. They called themselves progressives. My mother was also a registered Democrat. Over the course of the last 40 years, the communist progressive left that I grew up in had moved into the Democratic Party, started with the McGovern campaign, and today sits in the White House and runs the Democratic Party. Valerie Jarrett and David Axelrod are Obama's two key advisors. One is political campaign manager, and Jarrett manages everything else. Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, David Axelrod, all were born into the same communist left that I was, all trained in the communist left, all graduated to the new left, which was formed by red diaper babies like myself, with the same political agendas, and they've never left it. And how do I know that? Because I am someone who did leave. And I will tell you, if you are part of a movement that you come to understand is destructive and deceitful, the first thing you want to do when you get out is to repudiate it and to warn other people about it. And they, of course, haven't. But this is a mentality. I have to understand, as I say, my parents call themselves progressives. Leftists may be delusional, but they're not stupid. So they understand that you don't telegraph your agendas because it will turn people off. When I was young, Stalin was alive, the slogan of the American Communist Party was, it wasn't Soviet America, dictatorship of the proletariat, take away the wealth and distribute it to our friends. Their slogan was peace, jobs, and democracy. There is a guru of the left named Saul Alinsky. People are pretty familiar with him by now, a Machiavellian, who said, there's one message of the Alinsky book, which is don't telegraph your agendas, lie. Not too long ago, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is an extreme left-wing ideologue on the Supreme Court, who had only 4 Republicans voted not to confirm this ideologue, and is never referred to as an extreme left-wing ideologue, but that's what she is. Not too long ago, recommended to the Muslim Brotherhood, which was then, thanks to Obama, running Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood, an organization whose spiritual leader has called in so many words for the extermination of the Jews that slaughtering Christians across the Middle East, supported, however, by the Obama administration, still supported. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's advice to them when they were getting a constitution, or a fake constitution, since the Muslim Brotherhood has a motto, the Quran is our constitution. That's their constitution. But anyway, she was advising them, and she said, I wouldn't recommend the American Constitution. Supreme Court justice. I wouldn't recommend the American Constitution. It's kind of old. I wish I was making this up. It's kind of old. I would recommend something like the South African Constitution. The South African Constitution is the Stalin Constitution sort of, brought up to date. Its idea of rights, our founders' idea of rights were limits to government. The Bill of Rights is all what Congress can't do, what the government can't do. It protects the individual. The rights that we have that are positive rights are given by our Creator, nature's God, so enshrined in the Declaration. And why did they say that? Because if the government gives you rights, it can take them away. In this Constitution is perfectly Orwellian. I mean, first of all, it guarantees the right to an environment free of violence. Madison called this kind of right a paper right. Well, it's never, it's like the Stalin Constitution, and it'll never be fulfilled, this kind of right. South Africa today, its murder rate is 7 times what the murder rate in the United States is. It's the rape capital of the world. And of course, the left, which destroyed the previous regime, which was not an apartheid regime, which destroyed that, has completely abandoned South Africa. That's what the left does. It goes along, it gets everybody excited about the new world that's coming, and then it leaves disaster in its wake. In that Constitution, it says discrimination is unfair unless it is established that discrimination is fair. That's a direct quote. Did I mention George Orwell? Property rights. You have the right to property. Unless the government decides that for the universal good, they need to take it away from you. That's in the Constitution. It's a communist constitution, and it was written by communists. However, if you are progressive, you think anybody who has questions about the wisdom of moving forward with this grand plan to redeem the world is evil. And that's the way they treat Republicans and conservatives. You are evil. We progressives are the army of the saints, and you Republicans and conservatives are the party of Satan. And I mean that literally. It's the identical mentality of hellfire and damnation preachers. And that's why they character assassinate their opponents. The Democrats have really one weapon. When it comes to election time, destroy Republicans. Paint them as enemies of women, children, minorities, the poor, evil people. Evil people. That is the Democratic mantra. The Republicans are evil, and don't let anybody forget it. If the Republicans are elected, they'll burn black churches, and just go on and on with their line. It happens in every election, and Republicans kind of jaws drop. Can't believe they're doing that. You better believe it, because it comes from this core belief that people really naturally are cooperative, get together, honest, hardworking. As I say it, maybe I've just spent too many years as a conservative. That just seems to me, who in his right mind could believe this? But they do. But they do. And that's what motivates them to attack the way they attack. The second fundamental, in addition to thinking that people are good and society is the problem, government is the solution, they're future-oriented. This is very, very important, and I don't think any conservative can understand this in their bones the way I do, having once been a leftist. Future-oriented. What I would say a normal way of looking at human affairs is to look at the past and see what worked, what doesn't work, how people have behaved for thousands of years. and what the limits then that you can accomplish. How much can you change things? Have people changed in 3,000 years? Don't believe it. How could we read the Iliad? How could you read the Bible and relate to the people in it if people had changed? People haven't changed. This is the same stories for 3,000 years. You know, the technology changes, so there are aspects that change, but the fundamental, people's greeds, their lusts, Cain killing Abel. I mean, come on. We see this among Republicans today. I mean, it's so people don't change. So it's now the conservative view. I mean, our country has moved polarized in this way, and we now have a left, a significant left, which we never had before. But you know, when the founders got together, I mean, you know, whatever their politics, they all had this common sense. In framing a constitution, we're going to look at the past, the history of monarchies, the history of aristocracies, the history of democracies. And they thought a democracy is not, you know, they thought like Churchill, it's the worst system except for all the others. I mean, and they were very fearful of a democracy because they saw that people are swept up in passions. And if the majority rules, it's going to lord it over the minority, tyrannize the minority, and crush them. That's why they put in the checks and balances and the limits. Progressives don't look at the past. If they did, they would never have dreamed up Obamacare. For crying out tears. You know, socialized medicine has failed for the last 70 years. Central planning. That's what the Soviet Union was about. There are libraries of books about its failures and why it can't possibly work. And yet they rammed through this centralized system, and now it's, you know, it's coming back to haunt them. But how could an intelligent person, as I say, these are not stupid people, but how can an intelligent person think that you could have a centrally planned healthcare system that works? Anyway, progressives don't look at the past. They look at the past to discard it. That's why they all talk about a living constitution. It's an old document, the Constitution. Well, people don't change. So yeah, it needs, you know, there are new technologies and there are all kinds of problems like that. But the fundamental core reality of human beings and their societies don't change. That's why the Constitution, even though it was written a long time ago, is still the wisest political document ever written. And, you know, we are abandoning it as we are at our peril. You say, well, how can you call the liberals and progressives communists? They're not suppressing free speech. Well, I have to tell you, a conservative on a university faculty is as rare as a unicorn. They have suppressed free speech. They've wiped it out in our universities. Oh, people think, oh, yeah, it's all free. Yeah, you're free to have this left-wing opinion or this liberal opinion, and if you're a conservative, you're free to be harassed and punished by your professors if you have conservative opinions. That's the state of our universities today. I conducted a 7-year campaign on the simple principle that where there's a controversial issue in a classroom, the professor should present two sides in a fair-minded way and let the students make up their minds. That was my whole proposal. And books on both sides. And for this, I was tarred and feathered across the country. The left-wing professoriate rose up in arms to condemn me. There were demonstrations against me wherever I went. That's the state of our country today. It's an imaginary future, and that's what makes it so dangerous. These people are pumped up. They're intoxicated by their own self-righteousness at bringing about the wonderful world which all you and all Republicans and conservatives are determined to prevent from happening, and that's the only obstacle to them. We, human beings, are the root cause of all social problems and all government problems as well. If human beings weren't so screwed up in their way, Yeah, like lying. It's not hard to lie, is it? So everybody sort of does it. They're innocent. When they do the fib, it smooths things over. But then when power is at stake and when, wonderful goods are at stake, the lies grow and they grow and they grow until you have a president who, 36 times told the American people, you can keep your health care. We're not going to take your plan away. Lie, knowing he was lying. Why did he lie? Because as we build a socialist future, it's going to be so good, we just have to get over this hump, so any lie that serves it will be good. The more beautiful the idea, the nobler the cause, the greater the crimes you are willing to commit. If you could actually have a world where there was no war, no poverty, on and on, all these things eliminated, what lie would you not tell, and what crime would you not commit? And that's why progressives in power had killed 100 million people in peacetime. This is not just like Hitler did in war. In peacetime, progressives killed over 100 million people across the communist world. Lenin did not come to power saying, I'm going to create gulags, put tens of million people in slave labor camps and slaughter others. That's not what he said. Peace, land, bread. He had a vision of the beautiful future that Marx had promised. That's what he had a vision of. And that's what caused him to be such an evil individual as he was. The third thing, the third fundamental problem or thing you need to watch in the left, you can see the syndrome, is this vision of the perfect future, the land that never existed and never will, but which you identify. Everything that you do is to get to that land. Every sacrifice you make, every misdeed that you excuse yourself in doing is justified by that future. Your allegiance to that future causes you to be alienated from your country. And that uncertain loyalty to country is endemic in the Democratic Party. And I'm sorry to say Republicans let them get away with this all the time. We lost thousands of young men and women to keep Iraq out of the hand, to take it, first of all, from a monster tyrant who had a mass grave with 300,000 bodies in it, and to keep Iraq from being part of the Islamo-fascist nexus, to keep Iraq independent and relatively free. Obama betrayed every single American who gave their life in Iraq by turning it over to the Iraqis without keeping an American base and 20,000 American troops as the Joint Chiefs wanted. That was we spent over $1 trillion in Iraq, and we got nothing. And all those deluded, mendacious leftists who kept saying, no blood for oil. Where did the oil go? It went to China. America did this out of a great goodness that is this country, made these sacrifices. And Obama just tossed it out the window. And not a single Republican said, Mr. President, you have betrayed every American who gave their life in this country. And the failure to do this has allowed Obama also to do this in Benghazi. There's no more shameful act in the history of the American presidency than Obama taking a phone call, learning at the beginning of a 7-hour battle that Americans were fighting for their lives in Benghazi, hanging up the phone and going to bed and off to Las Vegas for a fundraiser with Beyonce. And Hillary is just as guilty. And the fact that she's as popular as she is, and in the polls would beat any Republican that should make every Republican ashamed that they haven't fought the political battle. But how do they get this mentality? How can you betray your countrymen like that? Because they have a negative view of their country. And I don't care how many times Obama says this is the greatest country. That's all political baloney for public consumption. You look at his deeds. He's empowered. He's given F-16 jets. He gave billions of dollars. He gave political cover and support to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the Nazi party of the Middle East. That's who they are. It's as though Roosevelt had funded Hitler and sent him airplanes in the 1930s. That's where and where are the Democrats protesting this? There are none. And that should frighten every American. We have some heroic Republicans who are trying to bring Benghazi to the fore and bring these issues up. We needed national leaders like this. And it's a completely taboo subject, the uncertain loyalties of the Democratic Party. We have a Secretary of State who is a traitor to this country. I'm saying this as somebody who was in the anti-war movement in the 60s and who saw what we did. What we did was we caused the United States to leave the war, and 2.5 million Indo-Chinese peasants were slaughtered by the communists when they came to power. And that's thanks to people like John Kerry. But Kerry was worse than that. You know, it's one thing to be deluded and, you know, you oppose your country because that's a noble thing to do. We should not be thinking that way. Patriotism is noble, not betrayal. But Kerry did much worse than that. He betrayed his comrades in arms, the actual people that he fought with. He pretended that there were atrocities that he never saw and were not committed in order to damn them in the eyes of the world. And now he's delivering nuclear weapons to Iran under the guise of it's peace. This is as much peace as Chamberlain brought back from Munich. And the final thing about the left, so there's belief in the innate goodness of human beings, so that government is the solution, the state, and that people who oppose you are evil. The focus on an imaginary future instead of the real past and the real problems that we face. Conservatives are very pragmatic people. Democrats obviously aren't, otherwise they would never have launched Obamacare. And uncertain loyalties, because your allegiance becomes to this imaginary land, imaginary future, and you see your country then in negative terms. When I came out of the left, people would say to me, how can you guys hate America so much? How does the left, how do they hate America? Well, and that's because conservatives look and they, you know, we've been to another country or you've read about it. This is incredible. This is paradise compared to 99% of the world. But if you're on the left, if you're a progressive or a liberal, you're not thinking about the real world. You forgot about South Africa, which is now a destroyed country. You forget about South Africa as long as, you know, as long as there's not a white person as the prime minister, you don't care about it anymore. But progressives, they're thinking about the imaginary kingdom. And compared to the paradise that progressives envision, hey, America's a bad place. Any place would be. I mean, after all, we have poor people, more poor people now that Obama has been at it. And that once the progressives get power, what they do is they generalize poverty. That's what the experience of the Soviet Union should tell everyone. Except we don't read about the Soviet Union anymore in our schools because our schools are run by these same leftists. The final characteristic of the left is its dishonesty. Very important. I'm not talking about a dishonest. Everybody, as I said, you know, you tell fibs, you know, to make social things go more smoothly and so forth and so on. People spin, all politicians spin. There are obviously conservative and Republican liars as well. No, I'm talking about a trait, a dishonesty, which is endemic to the left. If you're a leftist, you're going to have to lie. And you're going to have to lie about very basic things, like you can keep your health care when you can't. Because if you told people what your agendas were, what your true beliefs were, you really think America is a bad country and needs to be taken down. And you're happy that we're no longer a significant world power thanks to Obama. In fact, you're mad at Obama because he hasn't made us even less of a power. You're mad at him for conducting the drone killings. I don't think those drone killings, I'm good at killing people, as the president has said. That's a character flaw. I don't ascribe that to his politics. Blowing up, I'm going to distract myself on this one, but still, the hypocrisy of it all. We want to close down Guantanamo because we shouldn't be incarcerating people captured in terrorist attacks against us in Afghanistan without a trial. Oh, but the president can sit there by himself and, push a button and blow up whole families in Pakistan because they're suspected terrorists. The hypocrisy on the left just knows no limits. You cannot telegraph, you can't say what your agendas are because Americans are still in a place where they would understand something is profoundly wrong if you did so. And therefore they lie, and they lie all the time. They have to. If you're defending something where you can say, well, look, and you're a conservative, you say this worked here, this worked there, that's fine. If you have an imaginary future, which Americans will be very suspicious of because they don't want to put their lives in the hands of the government entirely, then you have to deceive them about it. And deception is what this whole administration is about. I never thought I would reach a point in my lifetime where I thought we were close or could be close to a totalitarian or a one-party state where you could suppress any political opposition and just run it from then on, one party. However, if you are prepared to use the Internal Revenue Service politically to punish your opponents, if you have in place a comprehensive state-run healthcare system where you have access to the health information and economic information, financial information of every single American. And if you have a spy agency which has got such super technologies that they can read and listen into every communication between individuals in the country, you do not need a secret police to destroy your opposition. You already have it in place. And we have a president and we have a political party in the Democratic Party that has shown itself ready and willing to embrace this very system, which could end our democracy overnight. That's the dark news I bring you. Now, since I never like to ruin people's lunches, although I'm always just the nature of what I do is to depress you. Let me leave you with one return to Harold Macmillan's events with the most difficult thing because they're unexpected, and give you this very brief story. In 1986, I was on a panel in Paris organized by the Committee for the Free World, where there was a meeting between the Vietnamese, the French, and the Americans. And I was on a panel, and it was called, the title of the panel was, or the subject, Is Communism Reversible? And none of us really thought it was. And I gave a very gloom and doom speech, based on everything that I thought I knew. And lo and behold, 3 years later, it was gone. So, don't underestimate the unexpected. If the American people, this is the people most unlikely to ever accept a totalitarian system. It's a country of individualists. Our kind of core creed is we don't trust our government. My son gave me a T-shirt. I love my country, but I fear my government. That's the conservative motto. We have a country of millions and millions of people like that. I believe they're going to fail. I believe there's a tsunami coming in the next congressional election. The Democrats are going to go down in flames if Republicans will just keep their hands off each other. Thank you.